Welcome to Fantasy Focus. Today's podcast is presented by Geico. You can watch us every weekday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on ESPN's Twitter and YouTube feeds, plus the ESPN Fantasy Facebook page, as well as the ESPN app. And you can download Fantasy Focus wherever you get your podcast. We are on to Week 4. It's Field Yates, Matthew Berry, Stefania Bell, and Daniel Dopp. We are all here. Good Tuesday morning to you, Matthew.
Good Tuesday morning to you.
Thank you. And Stefania, you as well. How are you over there?
I'm good.
Feels like we're a world apart, even though we're about, I don't know, 15
I feel like
apart.
I have to look over aloft.
Yes.
Is there here's a question. Is there an alternative?
How's Daniel doing, seeing as how we went around the rest of the cast? Is that what the question was?
Don't care how you're doing.
Nope.
No. This is a question for Field.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. You focus on getting our return here fixed.
I'm literally in Slack texting to. I got it.
Okay,
We'll
there you
get
go. Great. Good job. Thank you, my friend.
Yeah, bud.
All right. So here's my question.
Okay.
So you say good morning. How are you doing? Right? And you often say that, right? Whether it's starting fantasy football now, whether starting this podcast. Is there another, and Stefania and I always say the same thing. Stefania and I always say, we're good. Great to see you. Happy Sunday or happy Tuesday, whatever the day is. Is there an alternative that any of us can come up with? Like,
sure,
what
sure
if I was
there
just
are.
like, I'm awful? And then and I just started doing a rant.
I could get philosophical with you, right?
Yeah.
Like we could just start it off like, what's the meaning of life, right?
I like that.
That would
42.
work. 42 is the answer?
Yeah, the meaning of life is 42.
Yeah,
the meaning
don't
of life
panic.
is 42. Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah.
What's your favorite Will Smith
I got
movie?
you.
That could be a good one to start off with.
Oh, I know the answer to that one.
What's that?
It's the new Nat Geo.
That looks
thing
dope.
That
looks dope.
amazing. That
Yeah.
is coming out. That is going to be my favorite Will
I'm also
Smith
a big
thing.
Hitch guy, but that everybody has their own preferences here, right?
Everyone likes Hitch.
I liked Enemy of the
You had to
State.
eat tacos.
I'm gonna say Men in Black.
Okay, that's
I'm
a
gonna say
right?
I'm gonna say Men in Black. I'm friends with Ed Solomon, the guy who wrote.
Right, of
No,
course.
hang on.
Yeah.
This is small, weird,
Ed
random
Sullivan,
story.
not Ed Sullivan. You might have thought he
No.
said Ed Sullivan.
No.
Being how old Matthew is, he said
No.
Ed Sullivan.
Ed Sol is go ahead.
Long. This is very random, very random story, and then we'll move into football.
Of course.
Doubtful.
But
your story.
when I moved to LA, one of the first things I did is I actually took a class at the Groundlings, the world famous Groundlings. You can take classes there just to and I just want, not that I think I'm a particularly good actor, but that I just wanted to be comfortable. It's improv.
Okay.
I just wanted to be comfortable speaking in front of people because at the time I thought I was going to be, pitching movies and TV shows, and I just wanted to be comfortable when I walk into a room and give you confidence, blah, blah, blah. So we're going around the room introducing ourselves, and this guy says, my name's Ed Solomon, and I go, wait a minute. I said, are you Ed Solomon, the writer? And he goes, yeah. I go, Ed Solomon, guy who wrote Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure? And he goes, yeah. And I'm like, oh my God. Which is like, that's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Okay.
Right? Bill and Ted's is like absolutely iconic. And so I've been friends with him for like something 25 years. And Ed's become a massive Hollywood screenwriter. So I'm a big fan of all of his work. And he did all the Men in Blacks, and he did, Now You See Me, and whatever. He did all the Bill and Ted's and
Got it.
Whatever. Anyway, big shout out to my buddy Ed Solomon at Ed Solomon on Twitter.
So this is why you asked us whether there's an alternative to just a
Right.
simple, how are you doing?
I'm
Which is
just
the same
saying,
way
like,
that everybody
whatever,
else-
like, how you doing? I'm fine. Like, it's always the same thing. So I'm like, let's switch it up. Let's spice it up a little bit.
Okay, well,
come
the
on, spicy
alternative, if I
tomato.
just walked right into the fantasy stuff, you'd be like, what a jerk. Like, nice to see you as well, right? So that's the line of thinking. It's
Do you
just-
think, has anyone in all seriousness, has anyone ever called you a jerk?
it happens infrequently?
Infrequently, but it's actually happened. Someone has, in all seriousness,
Probably.
no one has ever called you a jerk. I get called a jerk daily. I think there's entire Reddit threads about what a jerk I am. But I'm just saying, like, the nicest guy in the universe.
It's not a think. You know there are entire Reddit threads about.
There's entire Reddit threads about me about pretty much everything.
Yes.
But no, for you, Field, the nicest guy of all time, I don't think that anyone has ever called you a jerk.
Well,
and
that's
meant
part
it.
of the reason why I ask you how you're doing. I like to be kind to people when I see them.
You are.
You're
You are
overthinking
genuinely
this way
kind.
too much. I just
What?
like to say you're overthinking. I just like to say hello. I like to start off the show on a positive note because
How long have we known each other?
I don't know, 15 years, about a tenth of your life.
Probably something like that.
20%.
Exactly about right.
About
Overthinking is
half
what I
of
do.
Field's
It's
life.
true. That's true.
Overthinking is what
Half
I do.
my life and
That is
20% of his
hashtag on
life.
brand.
Yeah.
That is hashtag on brand.
Hey, guys, I just really quickly want to say I saw that fabled victory formation you guys were talking about yesterday, last night.
It was cool,
right?
That was cool. I've never seen one of those before in real life, but it was cool to see one.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you see what I did there, guys?
Yeah.
I did. Let's move
Yeah.
on. Let's get to football.
Last
Yeah,
night.
sure.
Yeah. Okay. Now that Daniel has 30 seconds of nonsense, hey, let's move on.
Fine.
Let's talk
Listen,
football.
if it
Let's
was
talk
up to me, we'd do an entire show of nonsense. If
Okay,
it was up
well.
to me, like we'd never talk football.
Talk
We
to
get
Ed
it.
Solomon, see if you can write one together.
Start
Man,
the good players. Here you go. You know what? Start the good players, bench the bad ones. Bingo, bango. There, done.
Field.
There you go. That's my advice for week 4.
Field
Yes.
first.
All the good
Ed
players you
Solomon-
should start. All the bad players you should
Ed
bench.
Solomon would have to acknowledge that he actually knows Matthew for that to happen. So
I know.
Right.
This is classic. Like, yeah, I follow him on Twitter. Like, we're basically friends, right?
imaginary.
Same way that Ryan Reynolds and I are like tight, right? Like Vancity Reynolds, love the Twitter account and TikTok for that matter. We're basically best friends. Let's move forward to last
For
night's
the record,
game.
Ryan Reynolds does follow me on Twitter.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow.
Just saying. As long as you guys are going to sit here and dunk on me, as long as you guys are going to sit here and dunk on me,
make it
Ryan Reynolds and I
easy.
do actually follow each other on Twitter.
Yeah.
It's because you play in that.
We play in that superhero fantasy football league. We've played in the league together for 2
Yeah.
years. We have DM'd before. I've never met him in person, but we have DM'd.
Yeah, that was definitely a manager. But by the way, our poor director Lisa is having to take the widest shot ever right now because Matthew's head is just growing exponentially.
You guys are like
I know
dunking on
Ryan
me left and right.
Reynolds.
What do you mean
You
growing?
invite
Ryan
it.
Reynolds,
You
yeah.
invite it.
Yeah, hey,
That's all.
Kevin Durant was texting me yesterday about first day training camp. You guys see that Letterman joke? I actually told Letterman to say that joke.
Neither of those things are true.
Oh, okay.
Neither of those things are true.
was a
I
good
was not
guess, though.
texting with Kevin Durant.
All right, let's move forward to football then. Let's get past our nonsense and right into Monday Night Football where the
I met
Cowboys.
him.
I mean, I texted
I
him
know.
the day before. I mean, Saturday
I
to set
know.
his lineup, but not yesterday.
Yeah, it's 2
His
days.
business
ago.
partner, Rich Kleiman's a buddy.
All
Yeah,
right,
you know.
all right, let's talk about football.
yeah.
Let's talk about football. All right, let's do it.
Okay.
Cowboys win 41-21 over the Eagles, a game that, if it's possible, didn't even feel that close, even though the Cowboys won by 20. Let's get to the fantasy side of it, though. We begin with Dallas, where Dak Prescott finishes with 238 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Really should have been 4, if we're being quite honest, as early in the game, the Cowboys had a drive in which Dak plunged in from like the 6-inch line on 4th and goal. Looked pretty clearly like a touchdown to me. However, it was called not a touchdown on the field.
I
Upheld
think
after review.
it felt like his momentum was stopped.
There were enough. I saw enough frozen images where it seemed clear the ball was past the line. I think the refs stated that the whistle had been blown, which once
Right.
the whistle is blown, everything after that is no
Exactly.
longer up for review. But anyways, a good night for Dak. Could have been even better. Could have been 26.3 fantasy points. He settles for 20.3 fantasy points. He's Dak. He's Dak. He's really good.
Dak. By the way, and if the second
CD Lamb
this-
caught a pass on the 6-inch line as well. Like that could have been.
it
4
actually
more
could have been a
points right
monster
there.
game because the Zeke touchdown, the second Zeke touchdown, he was down at the one. I guess that was the same. That was the same series, right? That
Yeah, well,
like
either way.
they had he passed to Zeke in the corner and Zeke was down like at the half-inch line. They called it initially a touchdown and then they overruled it, and that was the 4th and 1. Same thing.
So
yeah.
on a night
Yeah,
where a couple
yeah.
things go against Dak Prescott, he still manages over 20 fantasy points. But let's talk about Ezekiel Elliott here for a second, which was great to see that the snap share is pretty much the same. It's pretty consistent these days. It's close to 2/3 of the work for Ezekiel Elliott in terms of snaps, 1/3 of the work in terms of snaps for Tony Pollard. 49-27 was the edge for Zeke last night. He had 26.6 fantasy points, 116 yards on 20 total touches, plus 2 touchdowns, Matthew. For those that were able to be patient during the first 2 weeks, they were richly rewarded. This is the Zeke that we're accustomed to.
Yeah, and by the way, you're welcome, America. I just want to take one moment here, just to take a bow and say you're welcome, America. Everyone that has Ezekiel Elliott on their roster, you can send all your thank yous to me at Matthew Berry TMR on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter. Well, because I put Zeke on my hate list.
Oh, okay,
And
gotcha.
so there you go. Like I talked about it. Listen, you still got to start him, but I ranked him 15. But he was legitimately on my hate list. And so what happens? He comes out and is just a monster. And I think you can credit me for doing that. Like
I agree.
It wasn't a bad call, Field. It was me motivating Ezekiel Elliott. You know what I mean? I'm sure he read it and he says like, I'm going to show you.
You have a unique opinion of yourself and your own abilities this morning. You know that?
Anyway, well, listen, bad call by me, but great to see for Zeke. You know what was amazing is that completely got, like, just owning it, right? Completely got this game wrong. I thought the way they were going to attack Philadelphia is they were going, and they did this somewhat, but I thought they would attack sort of in the on the edges, and they would pass sort of in the middle of the field. And they did do that some, but they also just ran it right up the gut. They just, credit to the Cowboys. They just said, we're going to do what we do. And they ran it right up the gut, and they ran it with Zeke. And Zeke looked good. I mean, hopefully you stayed the course. I think, listen, despite me putting him on the hate list, we did talk throughout the last couple of weeks about the fact that, look, is he the top 5 guy you drafted to be? No. Does he still have a lot of fantasy value? Yes.
He might be back, by the way. He might be a top 5 running back. I mean,
20 touches last night. 20 touches. That, Matthew, 13 to 18 to 20. That's his touches over the last 3 weeks.
Tons of work for Zeke. He's going to get all the goal line work for the Cowboys. I mean, maybe Dak on occasion, but still, there's going to be no Tony Pollard at the goal line unless Zeke is just completely gassed. He gets important touches behind a good offensive line and a good offense in general. Zeke is fine for the rest of the season. Tony Pollard gets...
And I also like the fact, by the way, he got 3 targets. A couple of them were just sort of like Dak going through his progressions and dumping it off. But, he was more involved in the passing game than Tony Pollard was. Having said all that, before we move on to the pass catchers, I just want to say, if you have Tony Pollard, don't panic. Tony Pollard's still, I think, very useful and still needs to be rostered in 100% of leagues.
Yeah, but I think the rub with Tony Pollard, the frustration is going to emanate from this, is that last week he was amazing against the Chargers, right? He has over 100 rushing yards, looks the part, scores a touchdown. Yesterday, he still gets opportunities, but he salvages just 7.5 fantasy points, which is why, as I said throughout the week last week, hey, I think he needs to be rostered in all leagues. I'm not sure he's anything more than a desperation flex play, though, in a deep league, because the passing upside is good when he gets the opportunities, but he may not get them week to week. They got a lot of pass catchers in Dallas, and then if he's going to be a runner, he's got to cash one in, right? 65 rushing yards is great on 12 carries, but no touchdowns. And those are most likely going to Zeke based off of his physical skill sets and just the fact that he's still the guy. He's still playing 49 to Tony Pollard's 27 snaps. Useful guy, but better to have on your bench than to be counting on him in your lineup.
Basically was as good as Miles Sanders was last night, though.
Well, weird game plan for Philly. We'll talk about that in just a minute here. But let's finish off with the Dallas pass catchers. Still no Michael Gallup, obviously. But last night we saw Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb combine for 6 catches and just 92 yards. You'll take that if you're Philly. That's a huge win right there, you'd think. Problem was, it was everybody else that got the best of Philly, specifically Dalton Schultz. But no need to be concerned, obviously, on Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb still up over 65 yards in all 3 games this season. And Amari Cooper, so what? He has an occasional bad game.
Did you watch, when you watched the game last night, did you watch the main broadcast or did you watch the Manning cast?
Manning cast.
Okay, so did I. And so if you missed the Manning cast, I watched the entire game on the Manning cast. Really, really enjoyable, and not to take anything away from
both are great.
From Steve, Brian, or Lou, who also did a great job. But it's always interesting to see Peyton and Eli talk, and what they talked about throughout their broadcast, which you know, but for people that may have missed it, is just they talked about the Eagles defense and how the Eagles defense wanted to stay in that too high safety look, and just basically we're not going to let anything get us deep, and it doesn't matter what Dallas does, we're going to stay in that the entire game, which they ended up doing, which basically means it allows the team to run, and it allows the team to do sort of dink and dunks, which is why Schultz and Jarwin, sort of got looks in the middle of the field, right?
Yep, they did.
I mean, right
to that end, Dalton Schultz had 6 catches on 7 targets for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, Matthew, this is a conversation we've had a million times before, right? A tight end randomly has a nice game, and we say, oh, should he be added? Should he be rostered? Should he be, top 12 consideration this week? I've been down this road a million times before.
Sure.
Dalton Schultz is a nice player. Cowboys have developed him. He obviously stepped into a big role last year when Blake Jarwin tore his ACL in week 1. He's fine. If you want to roll the dice on Dalton Schultz coming back next week in your lineup because you don't have a Kittle or a Kelsey or a Waller or a Hawkinson or an Andrews or a Gronk, that's fine. But to me, he's just like almost every other tight end that I did not name right there. That you put him in there, you hope for the best, but you can prepare yourself for a 2-catch for 18-yard effort next week.
Yes, 100%. Does feel like that at the moment, at least, he is, if you're rostering a Cowboys tight end, feels like him, obviously, over Jarwin at this point.
Yep, but don't have tremendous confidence either way in a great game in any given week.
I agree.
Let's get back
again,
to
I just
Philly.
think this is a specific way to attack how Philadelphia played them.
Yep. Let's get to Philly. And Jalen Hurts, I think probably what we're seeing is that the floor is so high with Jalen Hurts, right? I mean, 20.5 fantasy points last night on a night where he didn't play that great, right? They 126 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, one of which was a pick six that was a wide receiver issue. That was not his fault. But he adds 35 rushing yards, Matthew. He's been pretty much as advertised for fantasy.
If you didn't look at the box score, if you just watched the game, and I said, okay, before I look at the stats, who do you think had the better fantasy day, Dak Prescott or Jalen Hurts? I think almost everyone would have said, well, Dak Prescott, right? I mean, like, Jalen Hurts looked bad. That offense was awful, like whatever. They got something in junk at the end, but Dak was in command. Jalen Hurts had more fantasy points. Jalen Hurts had more fantasy points than Dak Prescott last night. Now, it was 20.54 to 20.12.
Yeah.
So it's by, 0.4 fantasy points. But the fact is Jalen Hurts had a better fantasy day last night than Dak Prescott. On a night in which basically everything that could have gone wrong for the Eagles went wrong, Jalen Hurts still had the better fantasy day than Dak Prescott, who was brilliant last night. And so it just goes to show you about how amazing Jalen Hurts is and will continue to be for fantasy. His worst game of the season, by far, 20 fantasy points.
By the way, just a good reminder, that conversation we've been having about the quarterbacks that have been, would you add a Derek Carr and start him or add a Kirk Cousins to start him? It's like those guys are playing over their head, and they're average 22 fantasy points in a week. Meanwhile, Jalen Hurts plays those guys had 22 points this past week. Meanwhile, Jalen Hurts plays below average for his own standards and gets you 20.8 or whatever you said, 20.56. So that's why the conversation about whether you should be adding and starting those quarterbacks is so difficult, because there are at least 8 or 10 quarterbacks whose floor is just decidedly higher because of their rushing ability, their pass catchers, whatever it may be. Let's get to the other players, though, in Philly, because this is where I think things get more interesting. So Miles Sanders and all Eagles running backs combined for 3 rushing attempts last night. 3 of them. Miles Sanders had 55 yards on just 5 total touches, though. 8.5 fantasy points. He's been under 9 points in back-to-back efforts. He scored just 2 touchdowns in his past 11 games, Matthew. I'm not quite sure what to make of Miles Sanders' role, usage, and fantasy value in this offense right now.
I have 15 teams. I have 0 Miles Sanders this year.
Okay.
And I didn't have a lot of Miles Sanders last year because there are always people that are willing to take him a lot higher than I am. Mm-hmm. We talked about this, and it's not that he isn't talented. He's talented, but people argue with me about Miles Sanders all the time, and I'm like, guys, I don't know what it is. I'm not sitting here telling you that I know what it is. What I can tell you, though, is that 2 different coaching staffs, right? 2 different coaching staffs now, whatever they're seeing in practice from Miles Sanders, have not made them want to commit to him as the bell cow running back, as the guy they center their offense around. You hear Mike Zimmer talk, Vikings offense runs through Dalvin Cook. You hear Matt Rule talk, Panthers offense, it's all around Christian McCaffrey, right? Titans, what we do begins and ends with Derrick Henry. The
Raiders,
Eagles do
Peyton
not,
Barber.
more so than your Kenyon Drake.
I'm just saying, I'm being serious.
I mean, the Eagles, for whatever reason, will not commit to Miles Sanders. They didn't last year. You saw a little bit too much Boston Scott. Maybe it's because, maybe it's issues with the fumbling. Maybe they don't think he can stay healthy and, with an increased workload. I don't know what it is. I literally have no idea what it is. But in a game in which a lot wasn't working for them, he had Miles Sanders had 27 rushing yards on 2 carries, and they didn't give him any more than that. And this is not an anomaly, Field. This happens week after week. He'll have a good game. You guys are on your own with Miles Sanders.
I have an analogy.
You guys are on your own with Miles Sanders.
I have an analogy.
Okay,
not
what do you
saying
got?
they're the same style of player,
Yes, sir.
not saying the usage has necessarily been the exact same, but there are shades of Clyde Edwards-Helaire right now for Miles Sanders in this regard.
Ooh, I like that.
In that I may come up here every single week and share less than enthusiastic energy behind starting him, yet you'll go check my rankings every single week, and he may still creep up to running back 18 or running back 23. You're starting him almost because you have to.
Yeah.
But you're not excited about it every single week. It's unpredictable. He's a good pass catcher. Last year he had some drop, but he is a capable pass catcher. This offense can move the ball. Maybe there are some goal line opportunities. There's not a back on the roster that's playing right now that's a major threat to his goal line usage, right? I mean, it's not like Boston Scott or Kenneth Gainwell's any bigger than Miles Sanders. They're both smaller. But it just sort of reminds me of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, where we can sit up here and poo-poo the value, but he's still not going to fall that far just because there's A, the chance, and B, there are so few running backs you can trust.
But he's in that running back dead zone. He's in that
dead zone.
He's in that Josh Jacobs, when Josh Jacobs helped the Mike Davis, CEH, Miles Sanders. He's sort of in that range of lower end RB2s that you don't feel great about, but you're just if
not
well,
him,
if I don't right, exactly. Like you run out of guys to sort of rank and that you feel good about that, that you're sitting there like, well, all these guys are now, you're just hoping they fall into the end zone. At least Sanders is on a good offense and, has some talent. But for whatever I don't know what it is, Field, but people keep arguing with me every year about Miles Sanders. I'm like, guys, can we see it first? 2 years in a row now on Miles Sanders. I'm too low on Miles Sanders. And at the end of the year, they're like, okay, all right, you're right on Miles Sanders. But this year, I don't know, man.
I'm with you.
For everyone out there that has Miles Sanders on your roster, God bless. Good luck
to all of you. Let's get.
I got nothing for you. I don't know what to tell you.
You told us a lot for not knowing what to say.
I'm just saying, you know what it is, right?
Yeah. No,
what would you do if you had Miles Sanders? Would you try to trade him, for somebody that still believes?
I was the one that I just said I'm not sure what to do with him. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know what I would do. What I would do is I would probably this
rolling him
reminds me
out.
of who was it yesterday that we were talking about? If you had this guy, should you trade him? For what? For a bag of peanuts?
Right.
A waiver claim in next year? It's not going to happen.
Here's what I would say to your point about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, because should somebody be looking to trade Clyde Edwards-Helaire right now off of the big game? Meaning, if you have Miles Sanders, you say, you know what, he's going to have a big game here at some point.
Yep.
And then do you immediately? Then you're honestly, that's where I am with Robert Woods.
It's the
I
art
want Robert Woods to have a big game, and then I'm going to immediately try to sell him.
And trading is an art.
Sir.
There is an art to being able to talk about, and you're not trying to swindle or con somebody, but there's an art to trading and making a standpoint for why you should make this deal when someone has a big game. So that's all a part of it. Obviously, it's easy to be like, oh yeah, he had one big game, just trade him. It's always not that simple, but
But value changes all the time, just off of this game. Think about what Ezekiel Elliott's value is this morning versus what it was last week after Tony Pollard has the big game and everyone's just like, oh, the sky is falling on Zeke.
On that standpoint, I want to ask what Devonta Smith's value is because he had a huge week 1, and then these next 2 weeks have been, weeks 2 and 3 have been kind of a downer week. And so were we too early on potentially what Devonta Smith can be for fantasy?
Yeah, 5 catches for 44 yards over the past 2 weeks for Devonta Smith. And yes and no on too early. And here's the reason why. The answer is yes, in the sense that after 1 week, I was confident, okay, this guy needs to be in your lineup for week 2, and I think he'll stay there going forward. No, in the sense that his preseason ranking, he was going to wide receiver 42 in drafts. Right. So it's not like you drafted Devonta Smith and you bypassed a useful player in the back. I don't know what wide receiver was going in the low 20s for ADP, but just imagine there was a wide receiver who was going wide receiver 26, for example. You weren't bypassing that player to draft Devonta Smith. He was a lottery ticket, right? He was the wrong lottery ticket. You should have gone with Jamar Chase instead. Devonta Smith's an amazing player. This Eagles offense is just sort of figuring things out still right now. I think probably the answer is that you're going to be patient on basically every Philly pass catcher, other than I think Dallas Goedert, only because there's so few tight ends. And even though Zach Ertz was the one that found the end zone and had 5 catches last night, I still think Goedert strikes me as still the most talented, and you're still going to have him ranked higher each week.
I agree with 2 of those 3 statements. I agree that Goddard's the more talented one. I agree that I'll have Goedert ranked higher than Ertz, at least for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But do I think I'm still rolling him out there? It's dicey. You know what I mean? They like Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz is a talented player. A lot of the Dallas Goedert ranking and buzz in the preseason was the expectation that Zach Ertz was going to be on another team. And he wasn't. Now he's still with the Eagles. And so now you've got multiple tight end sets and you've got them spinning around. I'm actually still in on Devonta Smith, right? Okay, so he had a bad game against the 49ers. He had a bad game against Dallas. I think those were 2 tough defenses. I still think when we look at the end of the year, who leads the Eagles in target share, I think it's going to be Smith. And I think he's talented.
We're talking about 2 different things, though.
What?
I think we're talking about 2 different things. Still love the player.
Sure.
Have use for him on my bench, but
definitely not
will
cutting
he be inside
him.
Your top 45 this week?
It's going to be borderline. They're playing Kansas City. That game is going to be a shootout.
Okay, so
but
if he is inside your 45, it's 42.
Right. He's not going to be. He's not inside my top 35.
Thank you.
How about there?
Okay.
I'll give you that. And One last thing before we put a bow on this game here, by the way. And one last thing on Miles Sanders. Sorry, two last things. One last thing on Miles Sanders, which is like, this is sort of Nick Sirianni. Like, again, I get that he didn't cut the – no. But when he was with the Colts, they used multiple running backs every year. This is something that I made a whole big point about in my 100 Facts. Now, I get it. Like, he didn't call the plays, blah, 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 blah. But my point is that Sirianni comes from a running back by committee system. Like, how he has grown up, as it were, through the coaching ranks has always been running back by committee. So it's a really weird one with Miles Sanders. Last thing I want to ask you here about this game, and then we'll move on to waivers and everything else we need to deal with in injuries in week number 4. And I put this out on Twitter. Is the Cowboys defense good?
I'm not quite there yet.
Listen, you know me.
Night.
I'm a Washington fan. I hate Dallas with every bone of fiber in my being. And I got to tell you something. I thought that was an impressive performance by the Cowboys defense
no doubt.
last night.
They had a bunch of players that were out because of COVID. They've got injuries, obviously, on that defense as well. DeMarcus Lawrence, their best defensive player, is out for a significant period of time. I think they're better than they were last year, which is not saying much. I'm not ready to go to good yet, though, for this Cowboys defense.
Diggs is special. We agree there.
Trevon Diggs is a really good player. Yeah, I mean, that was a Devonta Smith favor from him last night, right?
I know.
Yes, listen, Trevon Diggs has 3 interceptions, 1 in every game. Name another player that has a wider interception in each week this year. Yeah,
Diggs is really good. Listen, are they a defense to be avoided? No, but I thought that was an impressive performance. I think I'm more bullish on the Cowboys defense than you are, especially because, by the way, you think about what the Cowboys offense did. The division they play in, and that offense has so many different ways to beat you down, whether it's to score quickly with their passing or to wear you down offensively. Like, I think other teams' offenses are going to be in poor positions a lot of time. They're going to be trailing a lot against them. The Cowboys' defense is going to be playing from ahead. I don't know. I was really impressed with Dallas last night, and I hate saying that, but I was. Like,
this game was important
honestly,
to all of us because one Matt Harrington, who is the producer of Fantasy Football Now, also the producer of this show from all of our video standpoint, unfortunately needed 12 points from Dallas Goedert in order to survive, and he did not. In our Survivor League Fantasy Focus, Week 3, Matt Harrington, unfortunately, is no longer with us.
Yeah. Tribute. Right? Tribute to
not
tribute
fat,
to
chubby.
team.
Not fat and chubby is his name.
Chubby. That is Matt Harrington's team. Love you, Matt. Appreciate you. You'll be watching the Survivor League from the sidelines.
You know, he probably would have drafted better if he drank a little body armor before the draft.
Right, Daniel. You know why? Because fantasy football is here, and that means more of what you love.
Not for Harrington.
The teams, the rivalries, the stats, and the trash talking of friends. And your favorite fantasy football stars like Kyler Murray and Christian McCaffrey and CeeDee Lamb and Baker Mayfield, they all rely on body armor to get them to the next level and perform at their best and give you the trash talking points you need. And hey, this fall is a great time to up your game too. And Body Armor has got you covered. Everybody is focused on staying active and healthy, and hydration is an important part of that. It's more than just a sports drink. It's made with potassium-packed electrolytes, antioxidants, and there are no artificial sweeteners, flavors, or dyes. Now through December 31st, buy any one Body Armor product, upload your receipt at www.bafootballtailgate.com, and you'll be entered for a chance to win one of hundreds of amazing prizes for your next tailgate. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited, open to residents of U.S. 18 and older.
Is this me?
Nope.
Oh, no.
You're good. You're doing a great job, Matthew. Keep it up. Hey, let's get now to the best part of the show, Stefania Bell. And Stefania, let's get through some injury updates and I suppose some good news out of Carolina regarding Christian McCaffrey.
Well, it could be.
Okay.
It could be. It really depends on how it all gets managed. But Matt Rule said yesterday that Christian McCaffrey will not be going on injured reserve with his hamstring injury. Obviously, injured reserve would mean automatically missing 3 games, but in the fact that they are leaving the door open for him to return sooner is encouraging. I shared this data on Sunday, but from my friends at Fantasy Predictors, when you have a running back with a hamstring injury, the average missed games is 2.2. So if you think of it that way, potentially he could return between weeks 2 and 3, but it can be as long as 7 games or even longer if you have an outlier. If you think of Austin Eckler, he was out for 6 weeks. The key here will be the balance of conditioning for returning and allowing the hamstring to heal. Because if you're over aggressive, we know that there's greater than 11% chance of re-injury for a hamstring injury. So this is one where it's really all about how you set him up to come back, because he's on the field so much, he plays so many snaps, and he carries the ball so much, he's automatically an increased injury risk by that account alone.
We'll talk a little bit more about Chuba Hubbard in just a little bit, obviously a prominent focus in this week's waiver wire. But Stefania, let's keep things moving in terms of injuries. The Titans have one to another wide receiver. What can you tell us about A.J. Brown?
Yeah, A.J. Brown also dealing with a hamstring issue. They're calling him week to week, according to Adam Schefter. So I would take that as a sign that he's not likely to play this weekend against the Jets. And think about that time frame I just gave you on the average missed time for hamstring injuries. Again, it's really critical in how you bring a player back.
Tough start for A.J. Brown so far this season, 7 catches through 3 games, and now this. We talked about this yesterday, but there really isn't a Titans pass catcher that we're confident needs to be rostered who can step up into a fantasy-relevant role right away. I do think perhaps Julio Jones has to shoulder a bigger load. It's a good matchup against the Jets on Sunday. Of course, the Jets 0-3. Stefania Gronk making his return to New England this week as well. Obviously, Tom Brady is the main attraction, but Gronk, a legendary player in New England in his own right. But will he be healthy enough to play?
You think Gronk's going to miss this? I don't think so. He did leave the game briefly, but he returned last Sunday, had a rib issue, had follow-up imaging studies. According to Adam Schefter, x-rays were negative, which sets him up to be available to play this weekend. I think even if he had broken ribs, Gronk is one of those guys that you would expect to be out there regardless.
Yeah, I shudder to think what Tom Brady will be able to do without Gronk. I mean, he'd only be left with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown and Cameron Brate and O.J. Howard and Giovanni Bernard.
Right. But it's all about the moment, right?
And
you know
Leonard
both
Fournette.
Those guys want to be on the field.
Of course.
But,
Gronk, what we did see last week, though, is, and again, we're putting the cart before the horse here, but the Bucs did run a tight end screen last week that nearly scored. That was the Cameron Brate. Perhaps if Gronk were to ever miss time, you'd be more invested in Cameron Brate than O.J. Howard. Other side of this game is the
Does
Patriots.
Brady and Gronk, does Rob Gronkowski score a touchdoon on Sunday night?
Well, I guess, if that's a red zone question, I'll be answering yes.
Yeah.
But the Mike Clay in me is like, well, he could. I've got him projected for 0.72, but it's definitely possible.
I'm just saying emotional. I'm just saying, does Tom Brady make sure Gronk gets a score at Gillette?
Gronk might spike the football out of the stadium. I'm
just saying.
The ball would land in Attleboro, which is a couple towns over. Stefania, the Patriots are dealing with an injury to one of their most respected and valuable players. That's James White.
We talked yesterday about the fact that he was carted off. I mentioned the mechanism of the injury with him landing on his knee and that putting pressure on the posterior hip. NFL Network reporting that he had a hip subluxation, which is exactly what I was describing yesterday. In either case, that means it's an extended absence, most likely. It sounds like they have an option to put him on injured reserve, but he's out indefinitely at this point.
Of course, we're at the point of the year. Well, we're at the point any time of the year where you can put a player on IR for 3 games minimum. He can come back at any point after that. It would seem likely the Patriots go down that route. We talked about this again yesterday. I don't think there's a Patriots pass catcher amongst the running backs who's anywhere close to the player out of the backfield that James White is. And it's not just James White's his pass catching, it's his pass protection that made him so valuable. So I think the players that may stand to benefit from a fantasy perspective, I mentioned Kendrick Bourne, which I said is not tied to James White. It's tied to the idea that the Patriots need to adjust their offense a little bit. They need to find a way to get the ball out quick because protection's hard to come by, especially against the Bucs on Sunday night. Bourne showed me something on Sunday afternoon. He looked like a pretty good player, of course. Before he was with the Patriots, he spent 4 seasons with Stefania's 49ers. And last year, when the 49ers were literally down to Kendrick Bourne and Jerry Rice at wide receiver, 56-year-old Jerry Rice, Kendrick Bourne looked a pretty functional, useful player for them last season. Got him a nice deal from New England this offseason in free agency. The Broncos are dealing with yet more injury issues at wide receiver, Stefania.
Yeah, KJ Hamler was really kind of a scary-looking injury for him. He had to be assisted off the field by the medical staff, not able to put weight through that leg. On Monday, Adam reporting that he tore his ACL and his season is over. Vic Fangio actually, when speaking to reporters, said he tore his ACL and other stuff, suggesting a more complex injury. And so we will hopefully get more information in that regard. But ultimately, his season's over, and it matters that much more because Jerry Jeudy's still on injured reserve with a high ankle sprain.
There is a next man up, though, here. And this is a player we'll talk about, I think, a couple of times this week, and then maybe again on Sunday on Fantasy Football Now. It's Tim Patrick, who so far this season, in Week 1, touchdown. Week 2, touchdown. Week 3, a team high, I believe it was 98 receiving yards for Tim Patrick. This is a player who many have said, like, if there was an award for the best fourth wide receiver in the NFL, Tim Patrick and Auden Tate are like way too good to be a fourth wide receiver on a team. Tim Patrick is well-traveled, entered the league as an undrafted free agent, was with the Ravens for a while. He's found a home in Denver. There's a reason why they kept him this offseason, paid him decent money, too, for a guy who's going to be their fourth wide receiver. I think he's a waiver claim in deep leagues. I think he's just too useful, and this passing offense has faced about as soft of a schedule as you're going to get.
True.
I mean, truly, it's the 3 teams they've beaten are 0-9.
Yeah.
That being said, like, I do think there's something to be said for taking a look at Tim Patrick as a flyer, especially if you play in like a 12 or 14 or 16 team league.
Teddy Bridgewater has been functional. He's been solid. You know what I mean? Like, and again, I say this with no disrespect. Teddy Bridgewater is a professional quarterback. There have been a number of fantasy wide receivers that have had Teddy Bridgewater, fantasy relevant wide receivers that have had Teddy Bridgewater as the quarterback. And so, yes, with Jerry Jeudy out, with now KJ Hamler out, and basically becomes Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant, and Tim Patrick of the pass catchers in Denver, a 3-0 Denver Broncos team, by the way. And yes, easy schedule, no question. But I'm with you on Tim Patrick here.
Interesting player. Last piece of news here is that Josh Gordon has been reinstated officially to the NFL, and he's going to sign with the Chiefs practice squad. Matthew, it's a huge name. It's a player that at one point was one of the best wide receivers in football. He was a fantasy super-duper star.
Yep.
I don't want to say this. Does this matter? Because I don't want to. This is an incredible comeback, and Josh Gordon has dealt with a lot. I wish him nothing but the best. But is there like an actionable maneuver from this news?
There is an actionable maneuver, and that is to ignore it. Look, I am with you, Field. I echo this. This is what I put out on Twitter. Like, on a personal human level, rooting hard for Josh Gordon, who has dealt with a lot of adversity in his life, rooting hard for Josh Gordon, the human being. And any additional weapon for Patrick Mahomes in that passing offense, great. I am on board with, right? We are on board with that. But two things it's been a long time since, right? There's two things that I can fill that sentence as. It's been a long time since anyone not named Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill has had consistent fantasy value in that Chiefs passing offense.
I agree.
And it has been a long time since Josh Gordon has had consistent fantasy value. He had no real fantasy value with Russell Wilson in Seattle. Also a very good quarterback, also a very good offense. He had no real consistent fantasy value in New England with peak Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like, he had flashes there, but nothing where you were just like, oh, my goodness. And, like, I got text from friends last night, how much fab should I spend on Josh Gordon? And I was like, 0? He's going to the practice squad. We don't know when he'll be elevated to the active roster. And even if he is activated, like, we're a long, long, long way from seeing fantasy value from Josh Gordon. And could he catch a long from Patrick Mahomes? Of course. If you're on the field with Patrick Mahomes, positive things can happen. But we've seen this from Byron Pringle, from Demarcus Robinson, from Mecole Hardman. Unless something were to happen injury-wise to Kelce or Tyreek Hill, there's not a Chiefs pass catcher that I'm interested in starting on a week-to-week basis other than those two guys. Again, wish Josh Gordon the person all the luck in the world. I am rooting for him, but I think for fantasy purposes, you can ignore him, and I would even put that in a dynasty conversation. I don't even think he should be picked up in a dynasty conversation.
No, I agree.
I mean,
this reminds me of Le'Veon Bell signing with the Ravens, with more upside, obviously, because a pass catcher's value can be a byproduct of the quarterback he plays with, and there's really nobody better than Patrick Mahomes. But a huge story. I get the name. I am passing on Josh Gordon any of my leagues right now, and if you feel compelled to bid on him, I get it, but I would tell you to tread lightly right now. Let's move to the waiver wire then, Matthew, shall we?
Yes, sir. Field Yates,
you want to take over as the host, and then I'll answer away?
This is what I'm going to do here, because you, Field Yates, you write the free agent finds column for ESPN.com. It'll be up soon, I assume.
It is up now.
Oh, it is up now. It's even better.
Yeah.
Check it out right now. ESPN, ESPN Plus, ESPN.com, the ESPN Fantasy app. It's all there. And some of the names there, we've got some running backs, we've got some wide receivers, and topping your list, Field is a quarterback.
Well, he's not top of my list. We're just going
okay, we're going by position?
It's not,
all right,
definitely
fine.
not the top of my list.
All
but
right.
Kirk Cousins has been good. He's been a top 12 quarterback in each of the first 3 weeks. I keep saying, like, if you're going to be adding a quarterback, you want him to be somewhere in the top 12 or so range. By the numbers, Kirk Cousins would have been a worthwhile investment. He's got 21-plus fantasy points in every game this season. He's finished as a top 12 quarterback in every week this season. He's quarterback 4 right now for the year. He's got good weapons. He's playing really, really well. You could say whatever you want about Kirk Cousins, but he's extremely accurate, completing 73.9% of his passes. This offense, I mean, to be honest with you, there are people that I know this is a sentiment felt in Minnesota, is that this is a team that really is 2 plays away from being 3-0. And if such were the case, we might be discussing Kirk Cousins as having been one of the best players in football, period, so far this season. I know that sounds a little bit extreme, but I'm just telling you, like, they missed a chip shot field goal at the end of week 2.
Yep.
Week 1, they fumble late, a game that they probably should have won against the Bengals. They lost it in overtime. He's played really, really well, Matthew, that if I keep saying this. I am a broken record at this point. I don't know what the scenario is where you're like, all right, I need to shake things up at quarterback, but you're concerned about a matchup in a given week. Maybe you are just ready for a change of some sort. Kirk Cousins is the name to consider.
And another way to approach that is like, I don't need a quarterback, but hey, you know what?
Someone else might.
Someone else might. And you're like, well, I can't trade Kirk Cousins because he was out there in the waiver wire and people just don't feel okay. But could you maybe trade Aaron Rodgers? So you're just like, hey, I'm just saying, like, look at your situation, and you're like, you know what? I have Aaron Rodgers going to pick up Kirk Cousins. If I feel good enough in Kirk Cousins as a starter, and we think he's a viable top 12-ish starter, especially for the next handful of games here, like, then trade Aaron Rodgers, a known commodity, for something that can help you out.
By the way,
I mean, like, just a way to think about your league, like, because it's not just all about trading a guy that you pick up off of waivers. It's not just about picking somebody up off of waivers at a position of need. Sometimes it's about giving yourself depth so you can trade somebody better, right? That is on your roster that may give you more in return and give you back a running back that you do need.
By the way,
yes, sir.
I said that maybe that sounds a little bit extreme to say that he's played like one of the best players in football. Look at the numbers, though. Again, if they were 3-0, he's completing 74% of his passes, averaging 306 passing yards per game, 8 touchdowns, no picks. I know a small percentage of people that are listening to the show actually playing it, but if you played Scott Fishbowl, he might be the MVP of that league so far. He has been incredible. That league rewards quarterbacks for completions and completion percentage, so he has been
I'll just listen. In our 16-team War Room League, I drafted Ryan Fitzpatrick and Trey Lance as my quarterbacks. Fitzy goes down week 1, in the middle of week 1, and I picked up Kirk Cousins to be my starting quarterback in that league.
Worked out well.
And obviously, it has worked out very well the last 2 weeks. And so I've been watching those. I mean, I watch all the games very closely, but specifically that one. And one of the things that was really impressive about Kirk Cousins is, as somebody who's watched a lot of Kirk Cousins over the years, especially when he was with Washington, his decision-making, especially in the red zone, which has previously been a bugaboo of Cousins. He's been fantastic. He's been absolutely fantastic. Let's move on field now to running backs. A lot of injuries. If you need a running back, who's the number one guy?
Yeah, I think there's a case for Chuba Hubbard to be the number one player off of waivers this week, who's available in a ton of leagues. He, of course, is the backup to Christian McCaffrey. Matt Rule, their head coach, said basically it's going to be Hubbard first with Royce Freeman mixed in as well. Freeman, of course, the former third-round pick for the Broncos who was claimed off of waivers, but Hubbard, who I assume most people that follow college football remember him from his Oklahoma State days. There was a year in which he had over 2,000 rushing yards and 21 rushing touchdowns. Not a great finish to his career. A lot of stuff going on there with Hubbard, but talented guy in college, fourth-round pick for a reason. Next man up in this offense, he will not have close to the value of Christian McCaffrey. Certainly not as a pass catcher, but I would think if you add him, I think I'll have him ranked somewhere around RB 20 to 25 this week.
We saw with Mike Davis last year that the, quote, CMC role, the Christian McCaffrey role in the Panthers offense under Matt Rule is a valuable one. And I agree with you. He ain't Christian McCaffrey. He ain't close. But Christian McCaffrey's the number one player in fantasy football.
Sure.
Is Chuba Hubbard a top 20-ish running back? I do think so. Like, again, I think I was... For a rookie to outsnap Royce Freeman in the red zone last Thursday night, 10-2, thought that was a positive sign. He got more total touches. He got more looks in the passing game. I agree with you, Hubbard over Freeman, and I do think he's a viable low-end RB2. If you don't get Hubbard and you still need a running back, Field Yates, I know some people were very pro Kenyon Drake on this show.
Yeah.
Some people were not so much. Some people, I don't want to name names, but there was definitely at least one analyst I know that I heard of on this show that said, I got news for you. They like Peyton Barber.
Right.
They like Peyton Barber.
Right.
And it was poo-pooed by some other people on the show. Again, I don't want to get into, pointing fingers, anything like that.
That's good because we don't have a lot of time for it. Yeah.
But Field Yates, talk to me about Peyton Barber.
What's funny is I actually wanted to mention Alexander Madison as the next running back pickup because Madison really, I know something on the note, which is a different conversation, but Madison is clearly the number 2 pickup this week, clearly, because as much as Dalvin Cook looked like he could play last week, like, who's to guarantee that Dalvin Cook plays this week? To me, I don't know that it's a sure thing. Maybe it does happen, but he didn't practice at all last week, and they played just fine without him. So maybe another week of Alexander Madison is at least possible. But I will indulge you, Matthew. Peyton Barber played well.
Hang on. Let's wrap up the conversation on Madison. Madison, I assume, is rostered in more than 50% of leagues.
Yes, 75 plus.
Huh?
He's rostered in 76% of leagues right now.
Madison?
Alexander Madison.
He was at 40% yesterday when I was looking at it.
Right now, he's at 76%.
76.8.
Wow. Must have been. You know what it is? So we have our averages are taken. It's a rolling 7-day
average.
Right.
So I assume over the weekend when it looked like things were dicey for Dalvin Cook, he was picked up in a lot of leagues. Certainly agree with you that if Alexander Madison is somehow still available in your league, obviously a must-add. There's no guarantee that Dalvin Cook plays on Sunday or that Dalvin Cook plays the rest of the season because he could miss games in the future as well. Dalvin Cook has dealt with injuries throughout his NFL career.
Right. So we'll go back to your Peyton Barber love here for a second.
All right, so let's talk about Peyton Barber, Field Minister Yates.
How about this,
who
Matthew?
in week 3 had 10 more snaps than Kenyon Drake.
He had 11 more snaps than Kenyon Drake last week.
I was
after
told there'd be
Drake
no math.
dramatically outsnapped him in week 2. And the odd part about this is that the game script was one that you would think Kenyon Drake would be playing in. They went to overtime. They had to open things up. They were playing from behind for much of this game, and yet that was not the case. Now, I thought the Raiders, if they were going to justify signing Kenyon Drake for the money they did, part of that was a pot commitment to, if we're going to throw the football to a running back, it's going to be Kenyon Drake. Well, not the case. As Peyton Barber played for them, and he played well too, Matthew. I will give him all the flowers that he deserves because he rushed for over 100 yards. He found the end zone. He got some passing game usage. I'll take the L here. He is clearly, until Josh Jacobs returns, more likely to have a larger role week to week than Kenyon Drake. And I don't think that Josh Jacobs is a guarantee to come back this week.
Doesn't look like he is, and we'll get Stefania's opinion on that here in 1 second. But I just want to talk about this. That we talked about this, and I accept your apology, which I think it was sort of in there. And I want an apology from everyone on Twitter because I put out that video. We're just saying, guys, I'm sorry. Kenyon Drake, not good for fantasy. I don't get all this. Even if Josh Jacobs out, and I got some negative feedback on that, and I'm just, you know what? Hey, how about a little? You were right, Barry. I was wrong. Send me some tweets on that. I'm gonna own it, Barry. Because you know what? When I'm wrong, I own it. So I'm just saying here, this is what I will tell you about Kenyon.
Something to break on Twitter, by the way.
What?
Add something to break on Twitter.
No, he's at Daniel Dopp on Twitter. He's at something to break on Instagram.
Accurate.
But what I will tell you is there's one really important play that you had to be looking closely, but during that Raiders-Miami Dolphins game.
Okay.
Kenyon Drake was in there, missed a safety blitz pickup. Guy came right up through the middle. And Derek Carr got sacked and sacked hard. And then Derek Carr turns to the sideline and does this. And if you can't, hopefully you're watching, but he basically holds out his arms like looks at the coaching staff like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Basically holds out his arms like, what are we doing here? Kenyon Drake did not play another snap.
About that?
I'm just going to, that I think was really, really telling. And Kenyon Drake did not play another snap, and Peyton Barber was good. And so do I think Kenyon Drake will not play again? Of course not. He'll play. But my point is it was clear that he does not have the trust of Derek Carr in critical situations, and that's really crucial for his fantasy value. Kenyon Drake is what he is, which is a complimentary running back who is probably more useful to the Raiders than he is to fantasy teams. Because if ever there was a game for Kenyon Drake to go off, it was last week against Miami with no Josh Jacobs, and yet still Peyton Barber, released by the Washington football team and just on the Raiders for the last couple of weeks, Peyton Barber was the better running back, NFL-wise and fantasy-wise.
All right, I'm just going to take the rest of the waiver wire ads here and rip through a couple of wide receivers of note.
I just mic
Barry.
Dropped.
Well done by you.
In my mind.
Your mic is still
We wish
on.
that you would
Kenyon
actually
Drake.
just let it go. Just don't.
Boom.
Just yeah.
Two wide receivers we discussed yesterday, and we had, I thought, sort of similar mindset behind adding either of them, which is Christian Kirk, available in 77% of leagues. He has over 60 yards in each of his first 3 games this season. He's been a top 25 wide receiver in 2 out of 3 weeks, and he's been targeted on a career-best 22.7% of his routes. He has been good, as has Emanuel Sanders, who's available in 77% of leagues as well. As we saw last week, still has a lot left in the tank. He had 5 catches. He had 2 touchdowns, nearly 100 receiving yards. And then Hunter Renfrow, who is just he is the route running extraordinaire right now. He's so fun to watch. He is constantly breaking ankles of defenders. He had 18.7 fantasy points this past week. He was wide receiver 15 in week 3. And this team is throwing the ball a ton. They are the second highest passing team so far through 3 games. Only Tampa Bay has thrown the ball more this year, Daniel.
All right, so Field, you've talked about 6 different guys on the waiver wire here, but I want you to do me a favor and list them in order for me if you can, just so that the fine people at home can know if they were put in a waiver claim, what would Field Yates do?
Here we go. Number 5 would be Christian Kirk. We just talked about him. Really talented guy, obviously, but still number 2 behind DeAndre Hopkins. And there are others there that are still feasting as well, perhaps a Rondell Moore or occasional A.J. Green game. Emmanuel Sanders, who, same logic here, very good offense, who wants as much exposure to the Bills as you can get, but still going to have to compete with somebody like Cole Beasley as an example. And, of course, Stephon Diggs is the guy in that receiving group. Peyton Barber, number 3. I'm not sure how long this will last, as Josh Jacobs could be back any day now, perhaps as soon as week 4. But even if he has to wait another week or 2, Peyton Barber is the presumptive next man up again for the Las Vegas Raiders. Number 2, Kirk Cousins, who's just been so good for in so many ways for Minnesota so far this season. Hard to find a spot based off of the other quarterbacks for Kirk Cousins inside the top 10. But as Matthew noted, perhaps you already have a top quarterback. You can trade that quarterback away and fill in for him with Kirk Cousins and maybe upgrade your running back, your receiver, or your tight end room.
Wow, so finally, Hunter Renfrow, number 1, huh, Field?
There it is. Hunter Renfrow is not number 1, Daniel. It is Chuba Hubbard. Again, right now, it looks like he is going to be the man for Carolina. We do not know how long Christian McCaffrey will be out for. As Stefania said, we'll see an average of 2.2 games missed for running backs. That based off data from fantasypredictor.com. And if Christian McCaffrey misses 2.2 games, you might get 2 games out of Chuba Hubbard. If it's longer than that, then you have a player that is going to be super valuable even when Christian McCaffrey returns as the insurance policy going forward.
One real quick question, just for people that play in salary cap leagues or that have not salary cap leagues that have fabs. How much of your fab would you spend on a guy like Chuba Hubbard, knowing that you only might get a finite amount of work out of him, but it should be fairly consistent work for those 2 weeks?
You want to take a stab at this?
30%.
I was just about to say 30%. 25 to 30%.
25 to 30.
Because here's the thing. Chuba Hubbard has
value after that.
Has value in 2 ways. He has value right now, and even if you're like, I don't need a running back, you know who does? Whoever has Chris McCaffrey in the league. That person needs Chuba Hubbard. And there is, I think, even when, quote, McCaffrey comes back, I would go to the person that has McCaffrey in your league and say, like, I don't know, he came back last year and then he was hurt again. Like, aren't you going to want this insurance? How were those 2 weeks without McCaffrey? How'd you enjoy that?
Yep.
And so, I would think 25 to 30% for me as well.
Yeah,
I like that.
About right. It's always hard to tell, right? This is the usual conversation we have. Hey, a million different factors, but just a reminder that, fab pickups earlier in the year, they get like less valuable down the road, right? Because you only have so many weeks left that you can utilize them, and budgets. Some people spend big in the early weeks, so 30% might not be that much money relative to what you had to begin the season. All right, Daniel, we're going to do some quick hitters presented by Geico to wrap the show up. But first, do you own or rent your home?
Sure.
Sure you do. And I bet it can be hard work, but it's easy. Bundling policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowners or renters insurance along with your auto policy. It's a good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around your home. Go to geico.com, get a quote, and see how much you could save. It's Geico easy. Visit geico.com today. That's geico.com.
Grab a 5-hour energy shot to stay alert and watch all your favorite games. Or if you stayed up late last night to watch that intense Monday Night Football game, take a 5-hour energy shot in the morning so you can start your day. With 0 sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5-Hour Energy website has flavors galore like watermelon, tropical burst, cherry, peach mango, and more. Flavors for everyone. You can try them all, and on their site, they even have this really cool option to build your own 12 or 24-pack. You get to choose the flavors, and it's delivered right to your door. So if you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, you can get some 5-Hour Energy product today. Use our promo code FFF to receive 10% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. And Field, I'm going to take over and say this. Emptying the bucket for Geico. Emptying the bucket on week 3 is presented by Geico. Whether you rent or own, Geico makes it easy to bundle your home and car insurance. Go to geico.com today. And guys, I'm going to throw questions at you. I want to rip through as many of these as we can for our people. Mike Williams, is he now a set it and forget it top 10 wide receiver? Field Yates.
Yeah, he is. I mean, what else do you need to see from him, right? The utilization has been great. It's never been a talent issue for Mike Williams. He's got a great quarterback he's playing with. Defenses are never going to be able to solely focus in on him. Is he going to keep up the blistering start he's had to begin this season? He's like, what, wide receiver 2 right now? Probably not, Daniel, but in terms, like, you know, the players you'd be trying to trade for him, like if you were trying to trade Mike Williams right now, you'd be trading for an imperfect other wide receiver, a guy who has not been playing as great so far this season.
A.J. Brown.
Well, yeah, and I'm definitely not doing something like that.
Yeah, but I'm
right?
just saying, like, if you wanted to, like, quote unquote, get a better receiver, like, how many not good top 10 wide receivers have there been that you could even get with Mike Williams?
So I'm cool. Let's keep it with set it and forget it. Let's keep moving.
All right, deal. All right, Matthew, I want to know, just like Big Mike Williams, is Jamar Chase already a must-start wide receiver?
Yeah, I don't see how he can't be. Look, do I wish the target share was a little bit higher? I do. He's had a 30-yard or longer touchdown reception in every single game. Feels like that's a little hard to sustain. Having said that, insanely talented. His confidence and Joe Burrow's confidence in him is only going to continue to grow as he produces. It's gonna open up more opportunities. So while I'm nervous that, to your point about Mike Williams, do I think the production continues at this high level? I don't. But I can't imagine taking him out of my lineup again. He's just been red hot. And it's not like it's fluky. Like, the kid's super talented.
Yeah. Well, I will throw this out there, though. I consider him a potential sell high.
Interesting.
Do, because he's on pace for 85 targets this year. 85 in a 17-game season.
It's not a lot.
Just a random one. Just as one example here. Just one quick one. If you have Jamar Chase and I offer you CeeDee Lamb, who are you taking?
CeeDee Lamb.
But I think right now, because of how great Jamar Chase could be, you would not be able to just fetch the likes of players that have been imperfect like A.J. Brown or are hurt. Like, I think you could go big game hunting right now and get a guy who's been a star. I really do believe that.
DK Metcalf? Probably could. I don't think you could get DK Metcalf.
I think you could.
I bet, I'll tell you who you could get. A.J. Brown.
A.J. Brown and Allen Robinson, both of them.
One of those, though, right? You don't want those two, do you? Right now,
A.J. Brown. I think he's going to come back soon. I know.
I don't know. But right. Would you prefer Jamar Chase or Allen Robinson? That's a good one, though. Allen Robinson.
Oh man.
Let's assume as a part of this conversation with Jamar Chase that you're either 2-1 or 3-0, because a part of these trades, you're not going to be trading for a guy that's not performing if you're already off to a losing start, right? We're all on that same page.
Yeah.
Here's one for you.
I'd probably say Allen Robinson.
Okay,
boy,
here's one. You ready?
If
you have Terry McLaurin and I offer you Jamar Chase, you taking it or no?
I would rather Terry McLaurin.
But I'm just saying, I do believe you can go big game hunting right now on Jamar Chase, and it's not just guys who are hurt or guys who have been struggling. Guys who are stars maybe have
had one or two bad games, but
Terry McLaurin hasn't lit the world on fire, but he's still been really, really good. Right. So go ahead and give that a shot if you're interested in Jamar Chase.
I bet you get Amari Cooper.
Definitely.
Yep. All right, Daniel.
All right, another one. James Robinson confidence. Field Yates, 134 total yards, 6 catches on 6 targets, and a touchdown this week. Are you in on James Robinson, as we've talked about Carlos Hyde potentially being someone to vulture away touches there?
Yeah, I've remained confident with James Robinson. I think if you invested in him, my best advice for you is to hold, because I think that it's going to get even better. James Robinson's way more talented than Carlos Hyde. The snap share will start to become more discrepant in the favor of James Robinson. I'm hoping for better days, because week 3 was super encouraging. It starts, by the way, it's today Tuesday?
Today's Tuesday.
Thursday night. I was going to say tomorrow night. It starts
against pesky Bengals defense.
That's right. Pesky. One of the two.
Yeah, love it. All right, next one up. Matthew, I want to know, does Kyle Pitts make you sad?
Yes.
That's
this
the question.
was mine. That was me who suggested this. Yes,
Yes.
man. Like, come
Yes,
on.
makes
And
me
I know,
sad.
like, I do not know more than Arthur Smith does about football. He has forgotten more in the last 10 minutes than I'll ever know about the NFL. I'm
This
just
is
saying,
true.
like, he's the 4th overall pick in the draft at tight end. I want to see him get more than 2 targets or 2 catches, whatever it was this past week. Like, I want him to be force-fed the football 10 times a game.
Here's a positive thing, though. They play Washington this Sunday.
So you know
Kyle
he's
Pitts
going
going to go
off.
off. Like, they can't stop anyone. Washington can't stop anyone.
One last real quick question.
sir.
Closing out the bucket on week 3. Tyson Williams is no longer an RB2 that you can start in your fantasy lineup.
That is correct.
Is he a flex play?
I think so.
Low-end flex
Low
if he's a
end.
flex for
Low.
me.
Yeah. I'd rather
It's
not
bad.
play him,
It was
you know
just
what I
a
mean?
bad. It's just a bad, weird game.
Against a really tough
for the
defense. Who did they play?
Ravens.
Oh,
and
they played the
Marquise
Lions.
Brown
That's
comes
right.
down with a couple of those catches, and now they're in close. And Williams gets I think the narrative changes. I guess I'm more bullish on the Ravens offense and Tyson Williams than you guys are. That was a bad game. It was a bad game against the Lions.
It was. It certainly is. That much is for sure.
That's it.
That's it. That'll do it. I thought I heard Dave say about ranking, but I thought I already did the rankings.
Oh, yeah, we're doing
already.
rankings tomorrow, probably.
Oh,
Because it's Wednesday,
rap.
right?
He said rap, not rank. It's that British accent of his that just gets me every single time.
Or-
Yeah.
Put another shrimp on the Barbie
That's
field.
right. Yes.
Also not an Australian.
Not Australian either.
Not Australian, and that wasn't even
That
actually
wasn't even-
Australian.
that was his best.
Boy.
That was.
I
His
mean,
Ted
the
Lasso
phrasing
impression
was
right
Australian. The accent was I don't know what it was. It was
Put another
old-timey
shrimp on the Barbie.
There. Yeah, that's exactly
one
what.
better?
That's correct, Daniel.
It's like
just
pirate.
keep doing you.
I just watched a couple
By the
of
way-
I just watched a couple of Crocodile Dundee movies, so I thought I was pretty close.
Well,
Fair
that's
enough.
not
We
where
know
you
Rosie
should go
actually
for
did that.
authenticity.
God bless your girlfriend. Hey, real quickly, today out on ESPN Plus, the Fantasy Show with Matthew Berry celebrates its 300th episode. How about that?
Way to go, Daniel.
Well done.
Exactly. Congratulations to Daniel and all the puppets.
Strawman's
Thank
been
you for
awesome.
tolerating me for 300 episodes. We're very excited. So we have a lot of
Super
fun with
stoked.
that. And it is also, of course, the Week 4 waiver show. So please check that out on ESPN Plus, the Fantasy Show, me and Daniel. And we have a lot of fun with it. It's a good show, a good episode.
Rankings talk tomorrow and so much more.
For Fields, Stefania, and Daniel, I'm Matthew. Peace out.